I'm going to keep on continuously talking about this. That I said Boris Johnson might not last the year. And it looks like increasingly the bets and odds for that have actually come into being quite good. If only I'd done it at the start. But yeah, this isn't good. We talked about yesterday about Boris Johnson is annoying his own MPs. And as we've seen during the past 3 years, if you can't control your own MPs, you're going to have problems. And lo and behold, you could have a lot of MPs that suddenly go, well, we're going to go form our own unit within the party that basically says we need an extension to the transition period. We're not going to let you do it unless you give us that. And that could happen. And you could, if that happens, it could be all to play for. We could be looking at next year having another general election, possibly. People are already putting for Rishi Sunak as a potential replacement to Johnson because of because of his furlough scheme. He brought in the furlough scheme, so he's popular. However, not really, because he's a typical Tory finance minister. He gives with one hand and then takes even more with another. Yeah. So here we have Sean O'Grady, and I'm so glad that this came up, because there were some people that said, "Oh no, this is never going to happen," but now I'm vindicated by this. I love this. So the title is, "I predict Boris Johnson will be out by Christmas. He was never up to the task of leading this country." Every time I see Boris Johnson, I ask myself, how on earth did he get the job? Then I remember that it was luck, guile, and the big red bus, and some stuff about the NHS getting £350 million a week. The promise that never was. So, the question pretty much answers itself, I suppose. What I really mean is that it's just begun to dawn on me that he actually isn't very good at the job. The posh accent and the classical references disguise a bit, but the truth is, it's starting to show though. He's just not up to it. Remember what close colleague and friend Michael Gove said of him back in the 2016 Tory leadership debate. I have come reluctantly to the conclusion that Boris cannot provide the leadership to build the team for the task ahead. Right first time, Grove. Every bumbling performance at Prime Minister's Question Times, each stumbling appearance at a coronavirus media conference, each bit of misguided spin that emanates from Downing Street, all the ramped up, insecure promises and the hasty U-turns serve only to build up the evidence that we have somehow contrived a place to a clown with an emotional maturity of a toddler in charge of dealing with the worst pandemic in 100 years. When will all the madness end? I think by Christmas. I cannot say how or what by the manner of Johnson's leaving office will be, but I think we can all discern that the pressures will only intensify. Each avoidable so-called excess death represents a tragic and powerful and eventually overwhelming argument for his departure. There will be thousands more. Will they reach the 100,000 mark? The worst record in Europe? It is surely possible. Due to the course, Johnson will become an insupportable political burden for his party, as well as the morally shameful one. Right now, there's no chance of change because we are in the midst of an emergency. The long summer recess will be more politically charged this year. Without Parliament sitting, however, the opportunities for remote plotting will be fewer, and the time of change will still not be ripe. By autumn, though, there is every possibility that the economy will still be depressed, the furlough scheme will be becoming unsustainable, and the death toll unthinkingly high, with a real prospect of a second wave of infections overwhelming the NHS. because the lockdown was relaxed too soon. Those are perfectly plausible developments that could unseat a serving Prime Minister with a large parliamentary majority. There will be an appropriate towards the end of the. It will be apparently. It will be. Oh dear. They will be apparent towards the end of the year, as will the public's anger. The very trust and faith that so many place in Johnson will switch back, making sense of betrayal even more painful. By Christmas, a time of reflection, Johnson will be politically toxic. He will be no more immune to overthrow in the such circumstances than Tony Blair did in 2007 or Margaret Thatcher in 1990. Like them, he might very well find himself replaced by his Chancellor, with a promise of a fresh start. Being at the top means making the right calls and taking the right decisions, and Johnson has failed at every turn. No doubt he may have had some very bad advice, but he's also been sloppy, complacent, and reluctant to apply himself to the task even when he was well. He left a confused power vacuum when he was so seriously ill. He was wrong on lockdown, on testing, on ventilators, on care homes, and on protective equipment. So determined was he to ignore the devolution settlement in launching his lockdown exit strategy that he has weakened the union with Scotland and Northern Ireland. The free trade deal with the EU isn't going to happen. Neither will the one with the US without fracturing British farming. He has appointed a spectacularly lacklustre bunch to his cabinet, and seems over-reliant on Dominic Cummings. Now Johnson's shortcomings have at long last been embarrassingly exposed by the replacement of Jeremy Corbyn with Keir Starmer, the reinvigorated and highly able official opposition. Johnson is slowly losing allies and support in his party, and among its useful media allies. Perennial doubts about character and judgment are re-emerging. The exit strategy is premature and chaotic, while also too slow for his natural allies on the right. More than anything, though, the people are beginning to comprehend the human cost of Johnson's failures. He has let us down, and that is the unforgivable bit. It seems longer, but it is not near the end of a year since Theresa May was pushed out, and Johnson succeeded her. The muted anniversary and celebration will be on the 24th of July. Since then, he has, quote, got Brexit done in his own misleading definition, won the Tories a thumping majority, and seemed to be set on a full term of strong and stable government. Of course, a global pandemic would have changed everything, as it has in every country. Preceding governments have also made the wrong choices and failed to prepare. But the loss of life on the scale that is reaching in Britain was not inevitable, as the evidence of some other countries have shown. Johnson told us in early March that we would be okay because we have a fantastic NHS and fantastic testing systems and surveillance of the spread of the disease. The response was poor and lacking leadership. There will be a reckoning. And yeah, it's just a matter of when that reckoning comes. And I quite clearly said, I think summer was going to be the interesting thing, but now Parliament's in recess for the summer period. It's going to be interesting, and it could be autumn could be very interesting because there has to be a reckoning. There's no way Johnson comes out of this without one. And even should he have the gall to try and block one, or let's say there's a parliamentary report on this and he suppresses it, the sheer outrage that would generate, I can't see him staying. I really can't. And I will be surprised if he doesn't get booted out and replaced by his Chancellor. But even then, that doesn't really change much about what the Tories are going to do to this country. Rishi Sunak might actually have and go for an extension, which, if he does, will upset the Brexiteers, meaning that Nigel Farage will happily swim back in, meaning that there's a chance, again, Brexit Party's MPs swarming about all over the place, Again, potentially in my town, the closest they actually came, they were short by about 2,000 votes. And again, I keep on saying people, look, these idiots aren't going to do anything for you. Brexit Party MPs have no good ideas to actually help improve this country other than Brexit will help in some vague way. And that's it. But there you go. That's just the chaos that always seems to be consuming British politics since that particular referendum.